Hi everyone, this is Mrs. Eggerding and you're watching Unit 4 Video 3 and we're going to talk about solving rational expressions. Again, rational expressions are things that have fractions in them. So first, before we begin, I want to go back to some things we did at the beginning of the year. When we had a fraction in here, our big rule is to clear this fraction. And we clear this fraction by multiplying by that common denominator. And so in this case, our common denominator between 6 and 3 is 6. So I'm going to take this entire fraction and distribute the 6. And when I do that, 6 over 6 here cancels. 6 times a negative 2x is a minus 12x. 6 times 1/3 is 2. And remember to distribute the 6 to the 2/3, and that will be 4. You end up with a linear equation that has no fractions in it, and it's a little bit easier to solve. So we're going to do the exact same thing, except our denominators aren't going to be whole numbers, but we're going to run into having to find a common denominator. But it's the same strategy. We want to clear fractions. So here we have a rational equation with denominators here. Now before I begin here though, when we do have denominators, we do have to watch out for those domain restrictions that we talked about at the beginning. Because it's possible that when we solve this, we come up with a number that really can't work. Okay, so in this case, our domain restriction is all real numbers, but x cannot equal 4. That means if at the end of this problem, if I get a value of x equals 4, I really can't use it. So once you figure out that domain restriction, go ahead and solve the problem like normal, but just keep this back in your mind. So again, the first thing we're going to think about is how we can clear the fraction. And we're going to multiply by that lowest common denominator. And in this case, the lowest common denominator is just the x minus 4. When I distribute to the first one, the x minus 4's reduce, and I'm left with x. X minus 4 times the second fraction. The x minus 4's reduce, and I get 4, plus distribute the x minus 4 to the last one, and it's 4 times x minus 4. Again, I'm left with something that's a linear expression, or a linear equation, that I have the ability to solve. Now notice here, down at the end, I got an answer, x equals 4. It's a perfectly wonderful answer. But when I go back to my domain restriction told me, wait a minute, x can't be 4. So I get a solution here, and this is what we call an extraneous solution. And we've seen those before. What that means is the solution to this problem is really no solution. The one answer I got is not in the domain. The answer I got is not in the domain of this equation. And so my answer that I use is no solution. So let's go on to another one. 4x plus 3 over 4 minus 2x over x plus 1 equals x. Again, I'm going to look for that domain restriction, and my only restriction is that x cannot equal negative 1. I'm just going to let that hang out there while I worry about how to clear this fraction. My lowest common denominator here is going to be 4 times x plus 1, which means every single fraction needs to be multiplied by 4x plus 1. And let me show you how this would look one by one. If I take 4x plus 1 times 4x plus 3 over 4, the 4's cross off, and I'm left with x plus 1 times 4x plus 3. If I repeat it over here, 4x plus 1 times 2x over x plus 1. The x plus 1's reduce, and I'm left with 4 times 2x. And on the end, I don't have any fractions, so it's going to be 4x, x plus 1. So this is what it looks like after I have the fraction cleared. Now I do need to distribute, and so I get 4x squared plus 3x plus 4x plus 3 minus 8x equals 4x squared plus 4x. I do get a quadratic, but in this case the quadratics on each side are going to cancel each other out. As I combine like terms, I get 3 minus x equals 4x. 3 equals 5x. So I get my x to be 3/5. That number is in my domain, so that number is my answer. The assignment 1 through 13 odd, the first couple of them just ask you to state domain restrictions. The rest of them ask you to solve, and our technique for solving here is going to be to clear the fractions by multiplying by this lowest common denominator. Bring your questions to class, and we will work on more of this. Thanks a lot.